So, do you think data builds trust? Not in the age of fake news and conspiracy theories. It doesn't. But transparency does. It builds trust. We've all been shown indexes, dashboards, targets, but usually we are not shown the method. That's one of the reasons why people stop believing. Only one. In today's episode, we go inside an idea that's reversing that trend. Transition science, where open, replicable data rebuilds credibility in economics and in EU projects. You will also meet Jaden Gomes, sorry, difficult, Vice President of the Eureka Student Council. He told me something I can't stop thinking about. We as students don't just want to be stakeholders, we want to be co-creators. In this podcast, we've always been talking about co-creation, but this is new. Co-creation with students. What do you think? Listen to the interview. Finally, in this episode, we'll also unpack an Erasmus call. It's a great way for institutions to access Erasmus Plus funding from 2026 onwards. So, no grant money yet, but a certificate that unlocks millions later, if you know how to use it. Stay with me because by the end of this episode, you'll also see why transparency isn't just a virtue anymore. It's your strategy for winning the next innovation call. And don't forget to subscribe and pre-register for my new book, Transition Science in the Economy, launching November 15th. The link is in the notes. I hope you enjoyed the episode. See you next time. So, here's the paradox of our time. We have more data than ever, and we have less trust than ever. What's wrong? What gives? Indicators, dashboards, composite indexes, you find them everywhere. But people don't believe them anymore. So, transition science is here to change that, because transparency isn't just an ethical choice, it's actually a strategy for credibility. You see, I'm still looking for slogans, right? The idea in Transition Science in the Economy, my new book, is to argue that open, replicable data is the new foundation of trust. When you can reproduce a result, you can believe it. When you can see how an index is built, what variables, what weights, what sources, you can start to trust it. That's why the AWTY framework was designed from the start to be open source, methodological, transparent, and replicable by anyone. So it's not about persuasion anymore, it's about verification. Another essay at another attempt at finding a slogan. So now this has massive implications for research and innovation because EU projects like Horizon, Erasmus Plus, Life, whatever, they're increasingly evaluated not by promises but by measurable, auditable results. And I guess that's a tendency everywhere. So transition science can help give those projects a language of credibility, a way to prove that their impact, the impact those projects have on green, digital, or any transition is real, measurable, and comparable across countries and across time. So imagine your next project proposal backed not just by objectives, but by open indicators that anyone can check. That's how we move from reporting to proving, from bureaucracy to impact. So take the AWTY Green Transition Index. It tracks 195 countries over 30 years. Every data point in that index, and that those are over 30,000, every data point can be traced from OECD energy datasets to UN emissions databases. Traceability is the key. It measures not just decarbonization but readiness, who's actually capable of sustaining green growth when crises hit. So when people use AWTY, they don't just see scores, they see systems. And that's where insights turn into strategy. So why now? Why it matters now? Well, transparency is no longer optional. It's the only defense against public fatigue, the only defense against fake optimism and data manipulation and conspiracy theories and fake news and so in an era where every number can be questioned, the only way forward is to show your work and encourage people to question it. And that's the promise of transition science, to make trust measurable again. Here I am still looking for slogans. So transition science in the economy comes out on November 15th. It's not just a book about economics. It also is a book about economics, of course, but it's a call to rebuild trust through open, replicable knowledge. Because in the end, the future won't belong to those who collect the most data. That's peanuts nowadays, finding data. The future will belong to those who open it. I'll run a LinkedIn event on that day, so register now and start measuring what really matters. Another slogan. Okay, so welcome back to InnovEU, the EU Project Chronicles. Thank you for being here. Welcome, Jaden Gomes. Thank you for being here for this interview. How are you doing today?
Hello, thanks for the invitation. I'm doing fine. I'm doing really well. Excited for our conversation today.
Well, thank you for your time. So tell us a little bit about you. Who is Jaden? Where do you study? And when did you start?
So, my name is Jaden. As you mentioned before, I'm a student at the Escola Superior de Comunicação Social, which is the media school in the Polytechnic of Lisbon. Um, I'm a student of public relations. I'm doing my master's right now, and I've been involved in the Polytechnic of Lisbon since 2021, which is when I started university. At first, I was part of the student association in the School of Education. I was president for 2 years there, president of the student association. I participated in other student structures as well. And then last year, I ran for president of the Academic Federation of the Polytechnic of Lisbon, which is basically a structure that joins, so to say, all the student associations in the Polytechnic of Lisbon. And this year, through this federation, I had the opportunity to be a part of Eureka and its student council, and was elected also the vice president of the student council for this mandate.
So when did your involvement in Eureka started? This year?
Exactly. So just now, when in the last trip we had to Eureka Canex, was my first trip was my first, I would say, direct involvement in Eureka. But I was also part of the team before, because I was let's say, a substitute, a proxy for the student representatives. So I was involved in the conversation, not as actively as now, not as involved as now, and not, I would say, so into what is going on compared to now.
So you were aware of the project before, but you just got involved directly this year. And prior to that, did you had any other involvement, any other contact with some EU funded project?
Yes, I've participated in a few blended internship programs, in a few BIPs. One of them was in 2021 and 2022, I don't remember, which was a project about youth governance, and I went as a youth member of the local municipal, I would say, youth council in Sintra. So I was part of this group, and we went to Slovenia for I would say, a few weeks to talk a bit about youth governance and how we as youth can have an active participation in local governance, and share a bit of good practices, which I think was an interesting program. And then a few years ago, also, I was part of another BIP, which was about commons and commons practices. So circular economy and stuff like that, which I found really interesting, and also involved a lot about which are a few of which are Eureka values. So I think it kind of joins a bit both aspects.
Yeah, sure does. Tell us, what do you think is the average awareness of the students of the Polytechnic of Lisbon? What is their awareness of about Eureka? What do they know? Do people know about it?
Right now, I would say most people who are involved in the student associations have a generalistic view of what Eureka is. Most people who are not part of these structures know little or nothing. But I think that is normal because most students in the Polytechnic of Lisbon only know their own faculty. So a student from the education school only knows the education school. They don't know the rest of the structure, the rest of the family, the rest of the Polytechnic of Lisbon. So I think if there is this difficulty in the students recognizing the rest of the Polytechnic of Lisbon as an aggregate structure, Eureka is even further away for them, and therefore I think there is a step process that we also as student representatives have to start doing. A few stuff that we've done along this year which I think helps in the first step would be we've tried to have a few recreative and cultural events as IPL, as Polytechnic of Lisbon, and not just separate them into their own pockets in their own faculties, which I think is helping this inter-faculty dynamic. And I think the same thing we will have to start doing with Eureka. So I think the BIPs are a fun way or interesting way, I would say, of implementing this in the short term. And I think having Connects here next year should also help exactly that.
Uh, Let me ask you something. You know the project better than the average student. Uh, do you think that students should be aware and invest their time in this project? Do you think there's something for them to gain in this project, or you know the project? So what do students stand to gain from it?
I think, above all, I think students tend to gain perspective. I think we more than ever live in an international community, in a European community, and have this European identity. So it's important for us to also have this perspective about what's happening in other places, how other people think, how other cultures work. And I think that's the biggest advantage we can get from this project, this Eureka project.
So the
And
next question is, how do you involve students? How do you make them aware of it? How do you bring them into getting involved in the project?
I think step one is separating the project in different places. So right now, I think we need to have more presential events that join students from different places at different places. So the fact that Canex itself is happening in different places every year, I think helps this factor. So next year it's going to be over here. I am genuinely hoping for a lot of student participation, and we, as students, are working, as student representatives, are working in that sense. And I think that will be a first step in this sense. I think when students come to Connects, see other students from other countries participating in this project, and understand a bit more of the scale of the project, I think it's going to get them way more interested in participating. And I think that will be uh, a first point for us to evaluate if we are doing stuff the right way, or maybe we need to rethink how we are thinking of spreading this with our fellow colleagues. I would like to give you a perfect idea of how we should move on, but I do not have the answer to that, and I
A
think we need to
five-step
test.
plan in a PowerPoint. I was
I
hoping for that.
Unfortunately, I don't have that. I think no one does at this point. I think it's a really recent or new project. Even though it's had a few years, I still think we're in a starting phase of the project, and I think we need to do a bit of trial and error and test all the ideas we have, because I think that's the best way to move forward.
Well, Sometimes students are pictured as stakeholders in this project. I don't agree with that, and I think the nature of the project of Eureka itself is to have students as co-creators. And that's not really a stakeholder; it's a little bit more than that. But anyway, assuming that they are stakeholders, do you think that to get stronger involvement? Not stronger, larger numbers of students involved in the project. We should have a different structure, a different strategy of, I don't know, communication. Shouldn't we change the institution to have students involved in a project that is somehow larger than the university?
I think it's an amazing question because getting students to be involved is a problem that we ourselves as student representative structures are struggling with recently. I think the post-COVID generation is has a bit more problem in engaging. And I think this is a phenomenon that's been going on all through Europe. I think we are starting to recognize it now, and it's something that we should start thinking about strategies, how to get more student involvement, more youth involvement in general. I think at the Polytechnic of Lisbon, we have the luck to have students from different fields, completely different fields, and a few students who really like to participate. And I think having their perspective and their input about their faculty's culture is very important. One key realization I came to this year was I remember a few years ago thinking why the art schools were the least participative schools in the Polytechnic of Lisbon. And
And
I
they're
this
half, right? They're half of the schools, 4 out of 8,
there,
right?
there are three. The three of the 8 schools are so it's the music school, the dance school, and the theater and cinema school. So it's the three out of the 8 schools are art schools. Obviously, there are art courses, a few art courses in different schools. For example, my bachelor's degree was in visual arts and technologies at the education school, which is also an art course inside the education school, but hardcore art schools, there are only three, which is the dance, the music, and the theater and cinema school. As I was saying, something I struggled to understand was why effectively they had such a low participation in events in general, and especially in the life of the Polytechnic. And what I realized quickly during my mandate in the federation is that it's not that they don't want to participate, it's that they struggle to find the time to participate. The courses are structured in a way that students are in classes or working in their projects from early in the morning to late in the evening and have very little time to do extracurricular activities. So finding the time to socialize with friends, to actually have a life outside university, and then also to be participating in stuff like this is really hard. So I think the thing we need to be starting to think about is how we structure our courses itself. Do we need to have so much contact time? Do we need to have so much time in class? Can we have a bit more time for autonomous work? I think there is a bit
That's
of
the
a
that's the
reflection that
tendency. That's the tendency to have a more less contact time and more self work. So I don't know. I can talk for the art schools. I can speak for them, but that's I would guess that's what will happen. It's happening in my school in the most schools.
I think it's easier in some schools than others. I think in schools like the accounting school, as your school, and the communication school, which is my school right now in my master's, it's easier to implement a reduction of contact hours compared to maybe the art schools, which is a way more practical area itself. Um, A good example was the other day I
Some
was
people
talking.
would debate that.
Of course, of course. This is completely based on my experience with fellow colleagues of mine and being in this context for the past years. But obviously, this is all very debatable. There is no right or wrong answer to this. I think it's based on opinions on both sides, and I think they're both perfectly valid. But the when we as students have been debating this question in between the student representative and the student associations of each of the schools, we realized that for the artistic schools, at least in our perspective, it's a bit harder for this reduction of contact time. And it's also harder in the sense, for example, the music school, the students need time and a space that is appropriate to practice their instruments. It's hard for someone who is playing a trumpet to be practicing at home, which in an apartment, which maybe not so. Uh, I mean, it's about the conditions, right? So
Neighbors are not always that
exactly,
tolerant.
exactly. So it's a bit of a balancing act that I think we cannot take any decision whether about it right now. I think we need more data, and I think it would be interesting to do a study inside the Polytechnic itself for us to figure out which areas we can reduce, which areas we can't reduce, and if there is a necessity or not to reduce, and what's the impact of this reduction. Because we could realize maybe that this reduction actually gives students a bit too much autonomous work to the point where instead of learning, where it ends up being a disadvantage because they're having less time with the professor or less oriented time with the professor, and maybe that's not good. We don't know yet. So I think we need to have a bit more data before we take any radical
That
decision at this point.
That brings me to my next question. We're talking about changes, structural changes that will not happen without the involvement of the institution and its representatives. Do you feel institutional support for this kind of activities for the involvement of students in Eureka and other projects?
100%. I think we've had a really lucky time in the Polytechnic of Lisbon. I know colleagues of mine in other universities that have not had the easiest time as student representatives, and in my case, I cannot complain. I think by the in the Polytechnic, we've always been very encouraged to be participative, and our opinion has most of the times been very well received and debated. So I cannot say I've had any troubles in expressing my opinions along the years, and that it's been heard. I can say so. Yes. Obviously, we as students are a bit more, I would say, impatient and maybe don't know the bureaucracies and the structure behind most stuff, and that's why we expect stuff to happen faster than usually possible. But I think that's normal. I think
Yeah,
our job is to I wouldn't say complain, but to say
that
that
too.
have a vision, maybe a bit more youthful vision of how we would like stuff to be and how we think stuff could work better. And I think it's the professors and people who are here for a longer time to give us perspective on what is actually doable and what is not doable and what might not make sense in our institution.
Well, you bring me once again to the next question. What are your perspectives for the future? What are your hopes and plans?
I think there are a lot of questions that we as student representatives have been debating over the last few years. Obviously, there is a big change coming up in the Portuguese educational system, which is the changing of the base law of higher education, which probably next year should be out. So that's been the biggest debate. I cannot say I agree with most of the changes that are being made right now, but I think it's always a fun debate to have. In terms of what I see as important for the future, I think this question about the contact time is and our the adaptation of our curriculum is one of the most important questions that we are facing right now. One of the projects that the Federation is trying to do during the month of November is a project called Projetar 2030, which is projecting 2030. And the idea of this project is for us to invite people from the field, in the various fields that we have. So people from the arts field, people from the education field, people from the communication field, people who have been working in these areas and are experienced in these areas to give their perspective on how they think the market will be in 2030. And the objective of this is for us to compare our syllabus right now to what they are projecting and see if our syllabus is adapted to the future. And if not, what can we do to change it to get it to that point? So that's an interesting debate and an interesting project we are preparing for next month. And I think it will be very important for the future of the Polytechnic of Lisbon and for education, higher education as a whole. And I think us as students being uh, organizing this on our end without any incentive on the other hand makes it even more spectacular because I think it
Hmm.
shows that we as students also care about our future. We as students also care about our institution, even when we maybe won't be here anymore. So I think that's an interesting reflection to do. Another important point, especially for the Polytechnic of Lisbon, for higher education as a whole, but especially for the Polytechnic of Lisbon, is a question about infrastructure. Uh, in the start of this year, we did a study with more than 1,400 students having replied to this study, in which we asked them questions about infrastructure in each of the schools. And to know that right now our infrastructure is not well maintained, not in the best state, and not maybe the best for the future of our jobs or what we are going to be using in our fields in a few years. And thinking that we're in applied science in a polytechnic university, this is a very important point for us. And in terms of the future and what we're going to be using in our fields, it's very important to know that we're using the right material and the right infrastructure. So it's another point that we've been debating in the last few months. And I think these two poles are two very important poles. I'm not
Hmm.
even mentioning here the other pole, which is something that's a bit trickier to talk about, which would be tuition and, of course, how we can get help to students who are in need and how we can democratize education as a whole to make it as accessible as possible for any student who actually wants to study. So I think these are the three big questions
Hmm.
we have right now about our future.
Three excellent points that you're studying. About the second one, if you ask me, I would say the same thing. The infrastructure really needs an overhaul. And about the first poll, the first point you made, you're looking into creating some sort of conference or panel, I don't know, with professionals. I didn't understand. Only national or international?
Right now, we are thinking of a first step being just national, but the
Mhm.
idea is for this project to grow along the years. So this year, the idea is to first to start slowly because it's a new project. We don't know how it's going to be received, how we're going to be able to work with it. So we want to start at a smaller scale with the
Okay.
help, hopefully, of most of the faculties and the presidents of most of the faculties, and then see the impact it has and how we can better it to get to a scalable point where we can get to internationals. I think at this point, if we jump straight to inviting international talkers or internationals to this conference, I think on our end it could go extremely well, obviously, in the multicultural and the internationalization aspect of it. But I think the smarter thing to do would be perfect our structure first and then think at a big scale.
Okay. Maybe you can bring it to an international level in the context of the Eureka project. Well, any final message you want to end the interview with?
I would just say it's very important for us to have projects like these and conversations like these, and I hope we can create more space for dialogue. I think today's day and the way the world is going lately, dialogue doesn't seem like
Not at all.
an answer for anything, and I think. If we can normalize having a debate and having a dialogue, even with differences of opinion, I think the world would be way more of a
Well,
productive
yeah.
place.
I agree completely with you. Okay, thank you very much for the interview and for this ending. I think we're closing in a high ground. So thank you very much. And well, hope to see you soon in some Eureka event like Connects. Well, before that. Okay,
Before that,
thank you.
thank you.
This call doesn't give you money today. It gives you the key that opens the money door tomorrow. If your university wants Erasmus Plus funding in 2026-2027 projects, this certificate is the gate. Erasmus EDU 2022 ECI Cert is a call for certifications. The Erasmus Charter for Higher Education, ECHI 2021-2027. It's an EU quality certificate that confirms your HEI meets Erasmus Plus principles for mobility and cooperation. It's open through the whole 2021-2027 program with yearly cutoff dates and is managed by EACEA. Framing. Think of ECI as your institution's license to operate in Erasmus Plus. No ECI, no access to most Erasmus Plus higher ed actions. The certificate does not automatically award funding, but it enables you to apply for it. Validate you are a recognized higher education institution and that you comply with ECHI quality standards. Commit to modernization, internationalization, fair access, automatic credit recognition, greener mobility, and the European Student Card Initiative. Outcome: award of the ECHI certificate valid for the 2021-2027 program period, followed by monitoring by national agencies. Applicant type: public or private HEIs offering recognized tertiary qualifications, recognized by national authorities. Eligible countries: EU member states, including OCTs, associated non-EU countries, EEA others listed by Erasmus+, Western Balkans third countries not associated, Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, Montenegro. Special conditions apply to Switzerland, others pending association. Entities under EU restrictive conditionality measures are not eligible. Partnerships not required. This is a single applicant institutional certification, not a consortium grant. ECHE is the prerequisite that later allows your HEI to join Erasmus Plus partnerships and mobilities. Call opening, 22, Feb 2022, cutoffs at 17 SAU CET, Brussels. 26, John 2023, 25, John 2024, 28, John 2025, 27, John 2026. Evaluation, Feb-June. Results, July. The 2025 document is version 3.0, ZO 4 July 2025, with updates e.g. Switzerland conditions. There is no project budget here. This call awards a certificate, not a grant. No direct funding is attached to the award. ECHI unlocks your eligibility for future Erasmus Plus funding. 3 yes-no award blocks. Pass all 3 to be certified. Relevance of the Erasmus Policy Statement, EPS, to your strategy and targets. Quality of organization and management capacity and sustainability. Implementation of ECHI principles, including full automatic recognition of credits, ECTS methodology, equitable access, ESC initiative, green practices, and civic engagement. Part A, online admin data. Part B, technical description, EPS, profile, structures, implementation, using the portal template. Max 25 pages, extra pages aren't assessed. Create EU login. Register your organization in the participant register to get a pick. Go to the topic page in the Funding and Tenders portal and submit via the electronic submission system before the cutoff. Upload documents in the correct slots. Paper submissions are not accepted. Display the ECHI Charter on your website. Expect regular monitoring by your national agency. Non-compliance can trigger withdrawal. Make money. ECHI is your ticket to apply for Erasmus Plus funds in 2026-2027. Save money, time, avoid last-minute scrambles and future calls. One certificate secures multi-year access. Teach and lead. Embed transparency, automatic recognition, fair access, green mobility into your institutional DNA. If you're an HEI and you don't have ECHI, move now. For templates, deadlines, and submission. For more details, visit the Funding and Tenders portal.
Credits, author and host Fernando C. Gaspar, music Hugo Gaspar, Lisbon, Portugal, 2024. Reach us by email or DM.